Hello and welcome to today's Digital Dealer webinar. Today's webinar sponsored is Friendemic and it's titled Facebook Dynamic Ads 101, what they are and why they help you sell more cars. Today's webinar presenters are Brent Albrecht, VP of Business Development at Friendemic, and Miles Olson, CEO at Hoot Interactive. Your webinar will run approximately 1 hour with a question and answer session at the end. Please help me welcome Brent and Miles.
Santos, thanks, and we appreciate everyone joining today. We're excited about this topic. I think we're hearing more and more conversations about dynamic inventory advertising, and we're hearing a lot of different things. Dynamic remarketing or dynamic ads and dynamic targeted marketing, and a lot of different terms thrown out there. And I think there's some different perceptions out there as well as to what this entails. So we're going to go through some of the basics today on like what does this actually mean, and then what are the advantages to running dynamic ads for your dealership. And so let's we'll jump right in here and hit these and take you through it. So Miles, we're going to go. There we go. So we'll start out with first and just a quick, when we say dynamic advertising, what do we mean? So a dynamic ad, it's any ad where either the ad content changes and it's automatically updated, okay? And that update is based on information from an outside source. So if you think about, if we're running ads that pull for data from your inventory, things like the vehicle can change, the price can change, the audience, based on the audience, we can show different vehicles, and now the ad is actually not created until the viewer's ready to see it. So when that viewer goes to look at an ad, there's not a static ad, what we call, for an ad that's already designed as a single image or a single file. It doesn't exist in that sense. There's pieces of an ad, and they all come together for that viewer so that the content of the ad is determined based on what we want that viewer to see. And this is important for, one big reason. And it's something we've talked about in all of our other sessions, and it's about, again, how to really just, optimize your ads in general. And this is not true just for Facebook ads, but all advertising, right? That, to maximize your effectiveness of your ads, we want to we want to deliver the right message to that exact right audience at the right time. I mean, what that means is then it's going to be relevant. The more relevant it is, the more click-throughs you get, the more leads you get, the more conversions to sales, and that's our goal. So when we create ads, we want to minimize waste and maximize reach. The way to minimize waste is let's exclude people who are not the right audience for this specific ad. I want to maximize reach by making sure that the right audience, people in the market or people that are doing specific habits, like looking at your inventory, and not just looking at your inventory in general, but looking at very specific vehicles by model, by price. And now we can hit them with the right ad, and that's going to give us better click-throughs and help us maximize our reach. It also allows us to go after people, again, from a timing standpoint. When you target people in the market, we're not just targeting, anybody that might buy a car someday, but people in the market now. So using a combination of dynamic ads that come together with the data-driven targeting that we've always been doing, it enables us to get, that exact right audience at the right time with the most relevant ads. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partner here, Miles, and he's going to go through, kind of the nitty-gritty details of how these ads are created and how they function. So Miles?
All right, thank you, Brent. Hello, and yeah, I'm Miles. I'm the founder of Hoot Interactive, and we're a Friendemic technology partner. So we're handling a lot of the technical, complicated stuff on the back end of these, but I'm going to do my best to show you this in a very non-technical way that's going to make these very easy to understand, not only what they are, how they work, but why they're so effective when you use them in your Facebook advertising campaigns. So I'm going to start out with pictures here, kind of showing you an example of a dynamic ad. This isn't a real one. I know it doesn't look like a Facebook ad because I made it in PowerPoint with the rectangle drawing tool, but it's a good example. It's going to work for us. It kind of gives you an idea of how every dynamic ad starts, and they all start as a template. And that's what gives them the ability to be dynamic and kind of satisfy that first bullet point of what a dynamic ad is. It's got ad content that can change, and I think it should be pretty obvious what is going to change in this ad here. It's going to be changing vehicle inventory from the dealership. So this ad for Southwest Kia, I'm using them as an example, we can slide in any vehicle image, vehicle title, vehicle price, so this ad will effectively be able to advertise any inventory, any vehicle that is currently on the Southwest Kia lot and in their inventory. And that's pretty cool. It's going to be helpful in a lot of situations, but up to here, this isn't really a game changer. This is just something that's like, oh, it could be handy when we need to quickly swap out content, but it's not until we start taking into consideration that second part of what a dynamic ad is, the fact that it is updated automatically based on information from an outside source. This is where the ads start becoming extremely powerful. And so what is that outside source that we're going to be pulling information in from that's going to decide what goes into the ad? It's going to be your audience. It's going to be who's looking at the ad, or somebody that potentially could have this ad served to them. So in this situation, you know, these ads are not only dynamic, but they're also smart. They've got some intelligence to them. They can do something that your salespeople at your dealership could do naturally. If Cameron, in this example, walked on your physical lot, you'd likely have a salesperson that'd say, hey, what kind of car are you looking for? Oh, I'm looking for an economical hatchback. Great. Let me walk you over and show you the Kia Soul. Okay, so now we've got advertising that can have that same intelligence and that can respond to things we know about the user who is on Facebook or Instagram or any of those partner sites, things we know about them, audience categories that they're in, such as an economical hatchback shopper, to determine what vehicles we're going to pull out of that vehicle inventory feed to slide in the ad. So now we can have a very personalized communication to Cameron or any of the other potential car shoppers out there. And this, of course, is going to be happening in fractions of a second as pages are loading, as the ads are serving, and for every new person that comes along. So, you know, as now Lindsay comes along, Lindsay doesn't want a Kia Soul. A little hatchback isn't going to work for her. You know, she's got 2 kids, 2 dogs. She needs something bigger, storage capacity, and we identify her as a mid-size SUV shopper. And so in this case, we slide in the Kia Niro. And then just to drive the point home further, we got James here, and James is one of these people who wasn't even considering a Kia, never even thought to consider a Kia. He was looking at Cadillacs and Mercedes, but hey, we do know he is a luxury sedan shopper, and therefore we were able to serve him up ad for the K900 Luxury, kind of introducing James, hey, did you know Kia also is a big player in the luxury sedan market? So again, you should easily see at this point kind of the power of these ads to not only have content that changes, which is nice, but to personalize that content specifically for an audience out there and something we know about them and their intent of what they plan to buy in their car shopping process. Okay, so now that we've kind of seen the dynamic ads, what they are, what they look like, or what they could look like, let's kind of go back and compare it to their predecessors, the static ads. So here's an example, obviously a very old static ad that I found. A very attractive ad, and this one, of course, is always going to look the same. It doesn't have content that's going to change, and while this is a great promotional offer, it's not going to be of interest to everybody. Definitely Lindsay, she was looking for a mid-size SUV. This would be a great ad to show her, but it's probably not going to be the best type of content to serve up to Cameron or James. I mean, Cameron probably can't afford this thing, and James, well, he's looking for something with a little more luxurious. So while it still might impact them, since it is showing, hey, we're a Mazda dealership, we've got some great deals, and even though you're not interested in this car, click through, we might have others. in this situation, a dynamic ad, if we do know some of the buyer's intent, is going to do a lot better job of catching that user's attention and getting them to click on the ad and get back to your site and kind of starting that engagement process again with them. Okay, so 2 parts of these ads. There's the inventory part. We're citing in different inventory pieces, and then there's the audience part. And since I'm assuming everybody out there probably knows their inventory far better than I do, we're not going to talk anymore about that. It's the audience part that probably needs some more explanation. So what are these audiences? How are they determined? How did we know that Cameron was in the market to buy an economical hatchback? And can we trust that data to know that that's really what we should serve her? And then how is that decision made to select that appropriate vehicle to show in the ad? So let's talk about audiences a little bit. Definition: audience is one or more potential viewers of an ad that share a common characteristic. And that common characteristic could be anything. I mean, it could be a demographic variable, it could be age category, income bracket, geography, it could be color of their hair if you want. I don't know if Facebook offers that, but get the point across. Any common characteristic that can identify some potential viewers would be considered an audience. Now we're going to talk about 2 specific audiences that lend themselves very well to dynamic inventory advertising. And the first one we're going to go over is dynamic remarketing audiences. I wanted to start with this one because I think everybody is probably somewhat familiar or very familiar with what remarketing is in general. This is where somebody comes to your website, they get tagged because they were on your website, now you get to follow them around with ads for your website to hopefully coax them back and make sure they don't forget you. With dynamic remarketing, it kind of takes your normal remarketing a step further and makes it more personalized, because now we're going to use the dynamic ads with those, and we're going to use it to try to show the best ad and the right ad based on what the visitor, which is step 1 here, we're going to go through 4 steps for this, has viewed on their website. So I've got the fictitious Bob here. Now in internet land, of course, we're not going to have names like Bob. There's going to be some ID, so he might be XYZ123. I'm going to call him Bob. He comes, he visits your site, and we already know we got him tagged, so he's been on the site, so we can remarket to him. But in the second step here with the Facebook pixel, and Facebook pixel, if you're not familiar with that, it's just something Facebook gives you. Say, hey, install this on every page of your website so we can track things. It kind of works like magic. But with the dynamic remarketing pixel, it goes a step further than your standard pixel. You can't just copy and paste this onto your website. It's got to go a little further, and it's also got to be intelligent. So that when Bob gets to that page showing the Silverado 1500, that as the page is being loaded and this pixel starts to fire, it's going to intelligently look down on the page, and it's going to find the VIN, typically the identifier that we're going to use to associate with a specific car, and it's going to pass that back to Facebook along with some sort of ID for Bob, like the XYZ123. So now Facebook, once Bob visits this page, Facebook knows that Bob has looked at this particular Silverado 1500 based on the VIN that was passed through. Okay, so now we've got through step 2. Step 3 has to do with the feed. Now, this is Sally. She's a Friendemic campaign manager, and one of her responsibilities is she integrates the inventory feeds from the dealerships with their Facebook ad accounts. So as the inventory is changing on the dealership's lot, things are going in and out of stock, that what Facebook knows about the inventory is changing right along with it. It's never going to show any vehicles in ads that have already been sold, and it's going to make sure that new vehicles that come on the lot are eligible to be shown. We don't really need to go into detail about how that integration takes place, because that would be the technical part, and that is kind of the advantage of letting Sally do this. She gets it all set up, and notice I just highlighted over here the VINs that, of course, are going up with this feed that gets updated on a daily basis, because it's that VIN that got passed over to Facebook saying that Bob had viewed that particular Silverado 1500, and so we're going to need the vid in the feed for that lookup to occur. And that allows us to get to the final step, number 4, The ad, when the ad serves, so the next day, Bob logs onto Facebook and he's going through his news feed, and as he's scrolling down and content is loading and ads are loading, in that split second, Facebook is able to look and identify, oh, this is XYZ123, Bob, and I see that Bob yesterday had looked at a vehicle, a product page on this dealership's website with this VIN. And so now it can look back in that feed and find that very same VIN to serve up and show Bob in his ad. So it might be, if you can look down here, this red Silverado 1500, if you might have looked at that particular vehicle detail page, it may, and most likely will, show that vehicle in the ad, which is going to trigger a little memory in Bob. Oh yeah, I was looking at that, I'm shopping for that, increasing the likelihood of him clicking back to your website. But it's also going to show similar vehicles. And in the situation where, you know, maybe it's a number of days after Bob's been on your website, that vehicle might not even be in inventory anymore. It might have sold. And so in this situation, Facebook is going to be looking back to that inventory feed for not only the vehicle he looked at, but similar vehicles. Other vehicles he might be interested in that will also pique his attention. So hard to see it, and I can't thumb through because this is a static image, but other Silverado 1500s that are also new that would fit what Bob's looking for. And this kind of begs the question of what is similar, because it's certainly sensible for us to jump to the conclusion that, oh, well, you know, Bob looked at Silverado 1500, so we got the make, we got the model. If we just find any other vehicle in the feed that matches that make and model, well, that's going to be similar. And in a lot of cases, yes, that's true, and I'm certain that Facebook does consider that when they're defining what's similar, but it's not going to work in all situations, such as, say, somebody's looking for used vehicles under $10,000. The fact that they looked at, you know, a 2011 Ford Fusion doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be interested in a 2018 Ford Fusion. Instead, they might be more interested in a 2009 Chevy Malibu, because that was also a low-cost car that fit into their budget. So Facebook actually uses some more advanced intelligence to determine what's similar, and something that I think everybody has probably seen before. If you've gone onto Amazon and you're looking at a particular product page on Amazon, maybe a new barbecue grill, that halfway down the page, Amazon's going to be showing you, hey, you know, people that looked at this barbecue grill also looked at these other barbecue grills, and you will see a lot of other, oh yeah, you know, I might be interested in that one too, and you start clicking through. Facebook is doing the same thing to determine what is similar with the vehicles it serves in ads. So Bob looked at one particular Silverado 1500. Well, a lot of other people looked at that Silverado 1500, and all those other people, could be hundreds, could be thousands of them, probably looked at other VDPs on that same dealership's website. And the other VDPs that the group as an aggregate had looked at is going to help Facebook determine what vehicles are similar. So in the situation, Bob's looking at a new Silverado 1500, yeah, they're going to show a lot of other new Silverado 1500s, but for the people looking for the low-cost pre-owned vehicle, they're likely going to show other low-cost pre-owned vehicles, because that's what the majority of people who looked at that vehicle were also looking at. Okay? Okay, so that is dynamic remarketing, and that's, again, what everybody I think is familiar with remarketing. It seems like everybody's first foray into dynamic display ads or dynamic inventory ads is with the remarketing, and it's very obvious how this gets a relevant ad in front of the consumer. But there's another audience that works extremely well that is often overlooked, and that's called the in-market audience. These are sometimes called intender audiences. Facebook calls them in-market, so I'm going to call them in-market. And these are also very, very powerful and lend themselves very well to doing dynamic inventory ads. And in these situations, the visitor that comes in, and I'm going to use Chuck as an example this time, hasn't visited the dealership's website, but he is shopping for a new truck. So Chuck has been around the web, not on the dealership's website, but he's been in a lot of different places. He's been on Auto Trader, looking at new Silverado 1500s there. He's been over on Edmunds. He's been reading reviews. He's gone to some dealer websites. There's a lot of information and a lot of data tracked out there by a lot of different sources that can identify Chuck as a new truck shopper. And oftentimes, this is a lot more accurate and it's a lot more reliable than what you're going to see with just your remarketing audience. Because certainly, and I'll just use the obvious example of, you could have a 16-year-old kid going to the Chevrolet website and he's looking at a bunch of Corvettes. That doesn't mean he's shopping for a Corvette. Where in Chuck's case, he's been to there's been a lot of different data points, Auto Trader, Edmunds, other dealer websites, and possibly even offline data. And the situation where he might have a few days ago walked into one Chevrolet dealership to take a test drive, and they ran his credit report to pre-qualify for financing. In which case now Experian knows that Chuck has been at a dealership and is very likely looking to purchase a vehicle. So there's an example of some offline data that could also make its way in. And the combination, and Facebook has partnerships with a lot of different data providers, when it gets aggregated, and aggregated as, and let me go on a slight tangent here, aggregated as blind data. And that's a very important term to know, because if this doesn't create a little fear in everybody's heart about data privacy, well, it should. But there's a lot of clever ways that these data providers are able to both record the information and then share the information with major publishers like Facebook in ways that are blind, that do not allow them to go so far as to associate any of that data with an actual human person. But they do get just enough to allow us to have this capability to identify, yes, this visitor with some ID number on him is in market for a new pickup truck, and it's going to be a little more, probably more reliable than just the fact that Bob went to your website, looked at a Silverado 1500, because this person has been at a number of places, and we even have some offline data points that are showing that indication. So this is a very good, in-market audiences are a very good audience to be using, and they're advantageous because not only are you getting to the right ad to the right shopper, but you're also getting people you haven't touched yet. So you got a few people with the remarketing that you'd already visited your website, but you want those others that didn't even know about you yet. So one big advantage. Moving on with the process of in-market, it works slightly differently. When Sally has to set up the feed for this one, she wouldn't want to use the entire inventory feed, because before we had a VIN number that Bob viewed that we could look up in the data feed, but we don't have a VIN number for Chuck. All we know is that Facebook has identified Chuck as an in-market new truck shopper. And therefore, Sally's going to go and she's going to create a subset, a little filtered, they call it a product set in Facebook. Instead of all of the vehicles in the feed, she filters it down to only the Silverado 1500s, and that is what she's going to use when she creates her campaign to target the new truck shoppers. And this is, I kind of grabbed some screenshots here from the Facebook interface, so you can see exactly how this works, where as she's coming in and defining the audience, and we can look at the little breadcrumbs here over on the right, and she says, I want to define this audience based on the behaviors that these users have exhibited across the web. And within the behaviors, we want to look at specifically behaviors related to automotive, and automotive only the new vehicle shoppers. We don't want people who have been identified as used vehicle shoppers for these new Silverado 1500s. And then we're going to also whittle that down to the style of vehicle they're looking for, and then specifically she selects pickup truck. Okay, so this is how one of the campaign managers at Friendemic would be able to go in and start creating different groups for different targets and different type of vehicles that the dealerships want to promote. And then if you notice down here, the source, a lot of stuff that's kind of confusing and doesn't give you probably near as much information as you would need to understand it, but partner category based on information provided by our Oracle Data Cloud, multi-source U.S. household. There's a lot of data. This is where they kind of say, yeah, there's a lot of data sources that they aggregate from that are allowing them to determine that Chuck, yes, is in fact in the market for a new truck. And then once Chuck gets into Facebook, logs in, he's going to get served essentially the same type of ads that we served Bob, but for a different reason. Bob, we served it to him because we know he looked at a particular Silverado 1500, but Chuck's going to see him because Facebook knew and allowed us to target based on his previous browsing behavior and offline behavior, showing that he's in the market for a new pickup truck. Okay, so those are the two main audiences that you have to pick from. Both have big advantages. One for kind of staying on top of the shoppers that you've already had some touch point with and trying to get them to engage further, and another that can be used more as a new customer acquisition, to go out and get people's attention that don't already know about your dealership and may not be considering vehicles on your lot. Okay, so getting past that, let's talk about now the benefits. Even though I think a lot of the benefits should be pretty intuitive here, just being able to get that right vehicle in front of the right person. In the same way, my example with the salesperson asking Cameron, oh, what are you looking for? Let me show you the Kia Souls. It's pretty obvious, but there's some benefits that you might not intuitively think of. So let's go over a couple of those. One is increased efficiency, and this has to do a lot with speed. Static ads, they're static. They're always going to look the same. They're designed by some graphic designer, and they're always going to look the same. And if you want them to change, then somebody's going to have to go in, that graphic designer, and manually change them. So as right here, they must be designed and redesigned as the world changes around them. So they're going to take longer to produce, which is just fine in the offline world. When you created ads for the Sunday newspaper, well, the Sunday newspaper only came out once a week. So having Sunday newspaper ads created any faster than once a week wasn't really important. But the internet moves in milliseconds, and it's trying to make decisions of what ad to show in that fraction of a second as a user clicks to a page while that page is loading. So in that case, we need something a lot faster and that can keep up with more things we know. Now we can look at the current inventory with these updated feeds coming in. So as the dynamic ad is going to be able to keep up with current inventory, it almost acts like an evergreen now. You can have we've got our truck ads out here that are always going to show the current trucks at the current prices, and that's going to be updated every day and updated. So every second that you're serving up a new ad, it's showing the most recent data, where the static ad would have to be redesigned every time. This is going to make you more efficient. This is going to make you be able to move faster, and you're going to be able to keep up with all of the capabilities of the internet to give you data that you could respond to that you couldn't do with the static ad. Brent, would you like to add anything to that before I move on?
No, well, thanks, Miles. The only thing we throw in though is to keep in mind that there still is a place for static ads on Facebook, and obviously we want to take advantage of dynamic ads everywhere we can. And Miles gave two great examples in terms of remarketing and people in the market. In a lot of cases, we're trying to reach broader, more general audiences where I don't know about the person's preferences or whether they're in the market. And for that, then I need a more general ad. And in that case, that's the place where I think you'd see static ads still can have value for you. And we've talked before in other sessions about moving people through the funnel. So static ads, think of their place high up in the funnel, right? General audience, general ad. As you move people down through the funnel, and there's more specific audiences with more specific needs, we need more specific ads. And the way to do that and make it efficient to create that many specific ads, they need to be dynamic. And so I think if you kind of think about your sales funnel, there's places for these ads in each one. It kind of depends where you're reaching those potential consumers.
And I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah, there's definitely will always be a place for static ads because you're not always going to want to advertise your inventory. You might need to advertise a manufacturer's promotion for 0% financing for the first 60 months or what have you. That would be a place you'd want a static ad for that. A dynamic ad doesn't really lend itself to that situation.
Sure, tent sales this weekend. You know what I mean, and things like that are broader, more entire dealership based kind of promotions as well.
Okay, well then let's move on to benefit number 2, and I might be beating a dead horse here because we've kind of gone over this already, but improved ad relevancy. It is probably the biggest benefit of this. of using dynamic ads. And so I'm going to kind of show this again, but with the example of now another user, Kathleen, and remarketing ads. So as you probably know now that most consumers, by the time they walk onto your lot, they pretty much know, if not exactly what they want to buy, they've got it honed down to a few selections. So in this situation, Kathleen, yeah, she's already honed it down. She's been doing a lot of research online, and she knows it's like, yeah, I'm pretty certain I'm going to buy either the Toyota Highlander or the Volkswagen Atlas. And she's been on both of these dealerships' websites. And both of them are running remarketing campaigns, but the Toyota dealership is running a remarketing campaign with a static ad, and the Volkswagen with a dynamic ad. And so it's just asking yourself, well, which one of these things do we think is going to resonate with Kathleen? And certainly the Toyota dealership saying, yeah, we're the #1 Toyota dealership in Austin. Yeah, maybe that's going to make a difference. That might resonate with her. But I think we can be very sure that if Kathleen was on that Volkswagen dealership 1, 2 days, 3 days prior, and she was looking at that particular vehicle, that it might not matter that she's currently on the recipe site looking at recipes for the PTA bake sale. She sees that ad again and she's like, oh yeah, the ad, I remember, I wanted to check out, see what the safety ratings on those things were. Let me click through real quick. And now you've re-engaged Kathleen. She's coming back to the site in a far better way than you are with a static ad that might say something that is beneficial and persuasive, but not catching her attention in the way that something's targeted specifically to what we know she's looking for. And this becomes a little more exacerbated. I went with this ad because, it's the static ad because it's a decent ad. It's still got a good value prop that would be applicable for Kathleen, but there's a lot that aren't. And certainly, as we see the Chevy and the Ford and the Ram dealerships, go through the year and they have their truck months, I'm seeing a lot of truck month ads out there, static ads, remarketing ads, where, yeah, if you are if you are a Chevrolet dealership in Texas, yes, most of your business is selling Silverado 1500s. We buy trucks down here. That's going to be a good thing to push, but not to everybody, because you're never, ever going to convince Kathleen to buy a big pickup truck, and you're not going to convince Cameron, and you're not going to convince Lindsay, and you're not going to convince James. So good to have those truck months and to be able to promote those, but even better to get to these people who don't fit that one message for the static ad, to also get the people like Kathleen and Lindsay and James the specific vehicles they're looking for, so you can also catch their attention. Okay, proved ad relevancy, in my opinion, the most important thing that we have here, but this leads to another big benefit, which is going to take a little explanation because it gets into the statistics of internet advertising. Invariably, if implemented correctly, your dynamic inventory ads are going to deliver dramatically higher click-through rates than static ads. Now, certainly, if they're implemented incorrectly and you start showing James the Kia Soul and Cameron the K900, no, you're not going to get higher click-through rates. But done right, yes, you're going to see dramatically higher click-through rates, and those are important. And I know that's one of the millions of stats that you might have thrown at you by your agency or your campaign manager. Oh, we got bounce rates are down and conversion rates are up, and there's all these stats. Why is click-through rate so important? It is very important because the higher the click-through rate, the more advertising you're going to get for less money. And there's kind of two angles you can take to look at this. So I'm going to go with my angle, explain it from my angle, then I'm going to pass it over to Brent again and let him explain it with his angle, which is a lot nicer than my angle. But I like to, I've been in internet advertising for a long time, and I've often found the best way to kind of figure out how the publishers like Facebook or Google or whoever is deciding how ads are served is follow the money. So we kind of look at this economy that we have here when we're buying ads on a cost per click basis. If Facebook is selling us ads on a cost per click, that means they only get paid when the ad is clicked. So if your ad is served 1 million times and nobody ever clicks on it, you don't have to pay a dime, but that's not very good for Facebook because Facebook doesn't make any money. So they're not going to want to do that. And in situations like I have in my example down here, some ads are going to make Facebook a lot more money than others. And again, I like to kind of follow the money. What would Facebook do, or what would I do if I were Facebook and I wanted to make more money in advertising sales? Well, let's look at this example here. We got the situation where I'm going to say both the advertisers for both these ads, they're both bidding $1 cost per click, and they're both going to end up paying $1 cost per click. And Facebook serves each of their ads the same 100 times. But ad number 1 in the left over here, it had a 1% click-through rate. So at $1 CPC, that means Facebook made $1. Ad number 2 over on the right, 5% click-through rate. 5 times out of the 100 times served it got clicked, so Facebook made $5, 5 times as much as with ad number 1. This is certainly an incentive for Facebook to say, why don't we level this out? And that's exactly what they do. And they're going to do this kind of penalization, rewarding ads based on their click-through rate. So they might, and this is just an example because they do something far more complicated than this, they might come and say, well, you know, you're all bidding in an auction here, but in order for ad 1 over here to get the same amount of exposure as we're going to give ad 2, we're just going to require ad number 1. You have to pay $5 cost per click to get the same number of impressions, to get served the same number of times as ad number 2 that got 5% over here. Or it could go the other way around. Their algorithms are certainly a lot more complicated than that. A lot more goes into them. But that kind of gives you an idea, if we look at the financial kind of perspective, of why Facebook might want to give better, more advertising for less money to ad number 2 because of that financial incentive. But there's also more altruistic incentive, and Brent, you could explain that one.
Sure. And this goes back to, you know, I think it was last year that Facebook added relevance score to ads. And one of the big determinations of an ad's relevance and higher score is its click-through rate. With this idea of, you know, think about how Facebook works, where we're putting ads in the news feed. And people, they're not paying to go to Facebook, right? They go there for free to see, you know, I want to see posts about my friends and family and things like that. And if I see a lot of ads that I don't like, that are not relevant to me, it makes for a worse user experience. And obviously to keep more people coming to Facebook and coming back, you know, over and over again, they want them to have a good experience. And they want them to click on ads. So they want to show ads that users want to see. And so ads with a higher click-through rate, like ad number 2, Facebook says, people want to see this ad based on the click-through rate, so I'm going to show it more often, and I'm going to reward that advertiser with a lower click-through rate. And Facebook, you know, while they're not coming out and saying things like, you know, we'll show more relevant ads more often because we make more money, they have said that the higher your relevance score, the higher your click-through rate, you will pay a lower cost per click, which means for that same $1,000 budget, if, you know, again, that's how most of our clients are like coming in saying I have a set monthly budget, I will be able to show your ad more times. I will be able to get you more clicks on your ad. And, you know, the percentage of those more clicks that convert to leads will be higher. I mean, you know, ultimately, you're going to get more bang for your buck if you get better click-throughs and a better ROI.
Yes. And that's what it's coming down to. We get the ads out there because we want people to click on them to get back to your website so you move them further down the funnel. So if you can get for your, you know, $100, $1,000, $10,000 budget more clicks for that same amount, yeah, you're certainly better off. It's a huge, huge benefit of dynamic ads because, again, you will see they consistently, if implemented properly, they will be dramatically higher click-through rates than you're seeing from your static ads because of the very obvious reason of relevancy. Okay, so final section moving on to here. We see how they work. Hopefully by now you got a good idea. Oh, now I understand what dynamic ads are. And let me go over, I guess, one more thing before I get into the how to create and run. A lot of names for these. I'm calling them dynamic inventory ads. We've talked about dynamic remarketing ads. We've talked about they go under so many different names, and I just kind of want to encourage everybody. Don't worry about all the lingo and the buzzwords of, you know, what the actual official title is. You know, dynamic means what Brent said in that, you know, second slide of this deck. It means the ad content is changed changing or able to change, and it's going to be updated based on some information from an outside source, and then tag on whatever else it is. So if it's a dynamic remarketing, well, it's a remarketing ad that is dynamic. If it's a dynamic inventory ad, well, it's an inventory ad that's dynamic. So don't worry so much about the exact right terms. Just look how the words are put together, and it should all make sense to you. Okay, moving on to how to create and run dynamic ads, and I'm not really going to show you, which I kind of foreshadow with the subtitle here. You're probably going to need some outside help because some parts of this are a bit technical, and they're a little complicated, and they require some programming if you were to do this yourself. And this is why for so long we didn't have this. I mean, we always knew in e-commerce retail, they've been doing this for a lot longer than automotive, but they've had it easier. There are certain challenges in the automotive industry that have made this extra hard. There's some technical challenges that we had to get past before this could be easily and affordably and readily available for all dealers out there. And one of them is, the integration of that vehicle inventory feed. So for, just standard display campaigns, maybe not the remarketing, you're going to in-market, you still have to integrate that inventory feed. And I'm going to say that difficulty level is hard. Now, it's all relative. I mean, compared to launching a satellite into orbit, no, it's easy. But compared to what we're used to doing with just normal static ads, this is going to be a lot more difficult because it's going to require a programmer, which you likely don't have one in-house. But even if you do, it's going to be tricky, and there's some challenges, and I'm going to mention a couple here to kind of show you some of the things automotive has to deal with that other industries don't. But the feeds from your inventory management system, or possibly from HomeNet, which I know so many companies use, they're not going to work. They're not enough because they're missing one key important data field that must be there for the ad, and that is the vehicle detail page that vehicle is associated with. You don't get that from your inventory management system, and you don't get that from HomeNet. You only get that from your website. So you got your first challenge of, we got the feed, but how do we get it connected to that particular VDP URL so that when the user clicks, they get to that right ad? So that's going to create some sort of programming challenge for somebody to make that association and to do that automatically on a daily basis, and then have those feeds that now are reassociated with a vehicle detail page on the website automatically reformatted to be just in the format that Facebook requires, and then automatically published out to the web in some secure location that Facebook can then access to get updated data every day. Okay, that got a little technical. You don't need to worry about the technical parts of it. I'm just saying that there are challenges that have made this harder, and your options are plain and simple. I'd say, yeah, use your partner. Use a Friendemic. Friendemic is an agency, a partner helping so many companies do advertising on Facebook, and that's what they do. Your company, you sell cars, you run a dealership, let them handle the complicated technical stuff, and they can help you get out there. And now with some tools, with partners like us, we're able to allow them to do that affordably so they can get your campaigns running quickly without costing you an arm and a leg. And then if you are one of the dealerships, and potentially maybe a very large dealership group where you can't afford to have a full internal team, that doesn't mean you're totally out of luck. Yes, you still have the option to go and purchase some commercial integration software, save you the trouble of having to build something from scratch yourself. And then dynamic remarketing campaigns, there is one additional kind of tricky step with this. Still have the same problems of integrating your data feeds with Facebook, but one additional now requirement you have is installing that dynamic pixel, which also requires a programmer, and they're very specifically a JavaScript programmer that's going to be able to create some code within that script that's going to look on each website VDP page, find the VIN, pass it through to Facebook along with that identifier for the user. So a number of technical challenges that are there, but again, very obvious options for any dealership out there. If you're working with an agency, if you're working with a Friendemic, you've got a partner to handle it for you. And also not just handle the technical part for you, they also have a lot of experience doing this, running these, and so they're not going to make any of those mistakes that might accidentally get, show a luxury car to Cameron and the economy car to James. So advantages beyond that, but then of course there's also commercial integration software. If you are doing it in-house, and that is about as far as I'm going to take you on how to set up and run these, is most likely get some help. And then I'm going to pass it back to Brent one last time because this is our last slide.
Thanks, Miles. Appreciate it. No, and it looks like we're close to wrapping up here. Just some key takeaways for you. You know, one, obviously, dynamic advertising is more than just a buzzword. And while you may hear about it talked a lot, it does have very significant advantages over the static ads you might be running if static ads are all you're doing. It allows you to be more effective with your creative. You can promote your inventory in real time. So, you know, daily, you know, to the extent of you know, daily changes in price and vehicles, and you don't have to worry about, you know, advertising vehicles that you don't have on the lot. You know, at the end of the day, getting higher click-through results is a huge advantage, not just in terms of you getting better response to your ads, but it's going to make those ads cheaper to run. So you get more for your money. You know, as we said in the beginning, you know, almost everything with advertising is one of the keys is showing relevant ads. You know, we want it to be relevant to the consumer, and dynamic ads are a way to make ads much more relevant than you can with any static ad. Which again, there's a place to hit, you know, mass marketing and broad audiences, and there's also a place to hit specific audiences, and dynamic ads are the way to do that. So, and just that final key is that, you know, as cool as it is, there is some technology at the back end to really make all this happen. So that's really to wrap it up. But one more quick item. Miles is going to jump to that next slide. I think we have take just a quick minute to show this. You know, we always like to think about what's coming down the pipeline, and Miles showed you some cool examples of while they're dynamic ads, they still are photos and text. And where we're headed is something like this, where dynamic video ads. And again, you know, video has been hugely successful on Facebook. So now you can have an ad without any video production put together, like I said, on the fly. Go ahead, Miles. Let's hit a quick. And we'll see how the volume goes here too. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you hear the volume. But this is just to add a little more. Just like the dynamic inventory display ads that we were looking, this is a video ad where every day it can have updated, changing content in it. So here we go.
Well, here, and I'll talk over, because it seems like I think that, yeah, the volume is not coming through. There is obviously sound behind this, but you can see how, again, it's flipping through, showing different vehicles pricing, and it's bringing this in from your inventory. So you don't have to have a video production team come in and create video ads. You can do this kind of animated ad in there. So
yeah, and that one was specifically looking at a data feed that was watching for price drops. So it only included those vehicles that had a price drop of X dollars or more.
So appreciate you all, and with that we'll wrap up. I mean, my contact info is there. If anyone has questions or would like more information, feel free to reach out. With that, Santos, I think we can flip it back to you to see if there's questions.
Yeah, great. We're now in the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please add any questions to the questions tab to the right. Brent and Miles, thank you for that great information. We already have a few questions coming in. First question is, how do you choose to exclude when excluding an audience in ads?
How do you choose to exclude an audience in ad? You know, really in the Facebook ad platform, it's pretty straightforward. Just like I can select multiple audiences I want to include. So let's say I want to include, you know, people in the market to buy a Ram truck, and I also want to include people in the market to buy just a truck, right? Because I can do it by style and by brand. Just like I can include, there's options in the ad platform to exclude audiences, which I could be like exclude anybody who's, you know, certain age, income, or people who've recently purchased, who own a truck that's less than a year old. If I think like that's not who I want to hit, I can just add in audiences to exclude as easily as pick audiences to include.
Perfect. And again, a few questions people are asking for the deck or the video. This video will be posted on our website right after the webinar at digitaldealer.com/webinars. And as well, you can feel free to give Brent a call or email him at brent@friendemic.com. Give him a call at 630-508-3740. He's available anytime to answer your questions. Guys,
Absolutely.
who wants to know, I guess they're pertaining to one of the ads we're showing. Will that much text get approved on an ad?
We do, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Miles.
I was just going to say maybe we can find our way back to the slide that they were talking about. So would it be something like one of these Facebook ads here, a carousel ad?
Well, the carousel, maybe they're thinking more your example is created from PowerPoint, which probably is a less accurate, like from the Southwest Kia template. I'm guessing that maybe that's the question. And we do want to watch the 20% rule in ads. Now Facebook doesn't deny ads that go over the 20%, but again, you can get penalized to an extent in terms of cost per click that you're paying. So we do want to watch again the text in the Facebook ads that we do. But yeah, I think these ads were more set up to be like kind of real easy for examples for you to look at. But we do want to watch that 20% rule for sure.
Yeah, and I can tell you in these Facebook ads here, kind of your options here, the top section above the product images would be some static texts that would always be in here, where then you have the images, and what's below the ads are essentially just variables that are essentially mail merged in from your feed. So usually the title of the vehicle, year, make, model, trim possibly, and then price, and you probably don't have room for too much more than just that.
Perfect. And it's a three-part question. We wouldn't need to put a pixel on every VDP page. Wouldn't that slow down the site load time? And is there another way to do this?
Okay. Yeah, you certainly have to put it on every single VDP page, and for just standard remarketing, you want it on every page on your site, and this is really no different than what you're doing with your Google Analytics script. That also goes on every page of the site, and there's likely a container somewhere where when you put a script in the container that it automatically gets spread out to every page of the site. Certainly, if you have too many scripts and additional code like that is running, there is a chance that those could start slowing down the load time of your pages. But there are also ways to deal with that. Where you put them, HTML is pretty much sequential, so putting them further down in the code and you put them at the bottom of the allowable area is going to allow your content to load first and the script to load second. Now, of course, that kind of then creates the opposite problem. Oh, what if we load the content and they click away before it's fully loaded and fired the script? Now we're not tracking them. So you got to kind of figure out your balance. But yeah, that could happen. But usually that's only becomes a concern if you got way too many scripts running on your page. And we will see this. Go look in your Facebook Pixel Helper. That's a Chrome plugin that you can install. There's also the Google Tag Manager. Is another Chrome plugin you can install that'll let you see the Facebook and Google Analytics and all those scripts installed. And if you go in there and you see, holy cow, I got 17 different Google Analytics scripts installed. Yeah, that's probably slowing you down, and you probably don't need all 17 of those installed. Figure out the ones you need, figure out the ones you don't, and get rid of those.
Somebody wants to know, if they have a very specific, relevant audience, how can you lower the CPC?
If you have a very specific, relevant audience, well, the cost per click you pay is not based on audience alone. It is, in some cases, right? If you're the more data points that you select, there is a charge for that data. Facebook limits the amount of the cost per click that you pay that can go towards data. There's a cap on that. So at some point, you can be really narrowing down an audience. It's not going to increase your cost per click dramatically. And again, a lot of those things, the way you decrease that, if you have a higher click-through rate, you get a better relevance score, they will drop. You will pay a lower cost per click. So it's not based simply on the size of the audience.
And then, of course, increasing your click-through rate will help. And just always remember that in pay-per-click advertising, there's always that kind of balanced trade-off that if you want more volume, you're going to have to pay a higher CPC. But if you don't need a lot of volume, lower your bids, and there's always going to be that trade-off that you can get. If you don't need a lot of volume, less volume, you can get at a lower CPC. The higher amounts of volume, you're going to have to pay a higher CPC for.
Perfect. And somebody wants to know what's the difference between a dynamic remarketing and dynamic retargeting.
Very good question. I get asked that question a lot. Simple answer, there is no difference. They are the exact same thing. Synonyms, remarketing, retargeting. Again, Facebook and Google both refer to it as dynamic remarketing. If you go out to the world of ad exchanges and DSPs, they like to call it retargeting. It's the exact same thing. And so again, don't get too worried about specific lingo. Put the words together, dynamic retarget, dynamic remarket, and you'll pretty much know what those ads are doing.
Perfect. And how often should the inventory be updated?
Right now, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
No, I'll let you take it.
Okay, I think we update it on a daily basis. I think the idea is that depending how often your inventory changes is what would be the concern. But at some point, it's just not efficient. It makes sense that you need to update, hourly or anything like that. So we've seen that, daily updates is fast enough where, we're showing very close to, the current inventory on your lot, other than what's been sold in the last 24 hours. And that should be good. You wouldn't, if you have other solutions out there and they're only updating it, weekly or monthly, or, that's part of the problem. I mean, just everything's going to be less relevant. You could be showing outdated inventory. So you do want to make sure whatever solution you use is updated. I would say at least what we would consider frequently.
Perfect. And we have one more question here. Are there other audiences you can use dynamic ads for?
Sure. So I think, Miles covered, in market, which we think is probably the most popular and one of the most logical ones to go after. But you could do, I could create an audience of people of, certain age, like males, 35 to 50, high income for, let's say, I don't know, like a BMW dealership that thinks that's their audience. And then when we create product sets for you, instead of creating a product set by vehicle type or something, I might create a product set by price of, here's our most expensive models, and I'll show it only to that audience. You could do the same thing for on the opposite end. I want to target college-age kids or kids in college, and I'm going to create a product set of all my vehicles under 10 grand because I think, like they're the ones looking to buy, again, my low-priced inventory. So yeah, there's certainly, any way that we can, target ads on Facebook to certain audiences. There's probably a lot of different ways we could create product sets that would be most relevant to manage.
Great. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and thank you to Brent and Miles and Friendemic for sponsoring this great content today. To view this webinar on demand and future Digital Dealer webinars, please visit digitaldealer.com/webinars. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.